Dan Geltrude, besides anything else, is known as America's accountant. Dan Geltrude, I hear what Surjit Bhalla is saying. The flip side of the argument is, of course, that India would want to protect our agriculture sector, our small farmers, another sector which we may want to protect, for example, is our pharma industry. We are called the pharma capital of the world. How might US tariffs on Indian generic drugs, that's a critical export worth about $8 billion, impact both Indian pharma companies and American healthcare costs? And what diversification strategies, if any, do you potentially see a country like India pursuing?
So when you look at a trade war overall, you definitely are going to have unintended consequences on both sides. So as we've been talking about, President Trump is talking about having reciprocal tariffs, meaning whatever one country tariffs, the other country tariffs the same way. So if we specifically focus in on pharmaceuticals, what's going to happen is that pharmaceuticals that are exported out of India are going to become more expensive. On the American side of that, that means the potential for those drugs to be more expensive. On the Indian side, what you're going to see is probably a reduction of those exports because they're too expensive. So you have both sides experiencing some pain here. What I believe, and I think this is a positive here, is that President Trump and Prime Minister Modi have a good working relationship. Our countries are allies, right? Let's keep in mind that the common adversary is China. It's not between the two of us. So this is simply a matter of, you have on one side America first, you have on the other side India first. We have to find some common ground. Maybe everyone's not going to be exactly happy, but it will be more fair where the United States can pull back on what would, be harmful tariffs to India. This situation is workable. We have to get both sides at the table to negotiate it out.
Dan Geltrude, Ambassador Sybil briefly mentioned China. In the context of tariffs, is it the tariff war between China and America which is actually going to dominate the headlines tomorrow? Perhaps the clearest clash in recent times is going to be economic. And it's essentially the US versus China on tariffs.
I agree with you on that. I think the obviously with all the reciprocal tariffs that are going to go in place tomorrow, many countries are going to be impacted, and we're going to have to see how those play out. But when we specifically talk about the United States and China, that's the big battle. Those are the two world economic powers that are going to be clashing. And I believe, and I said earlier, that when you look at the United States with India, we need to work together because we have a common adversary in China. When you talk about countries that are operating for their own benefit and everybody is going to put their country first, I think when you look at China, they go above and beyond in terms of trying to exercise their influence around the world. And the question becomes, are they using that influence fairly? My personal position in all of this is that trade needs to be fair and equitable, in spite of who may have a larger economy. We can't control outcomes. That's for the countries to compete. What we can control is the fairness and the playing field being level and everyone having the opportunity to compete fairly.